First of all, I mean, there's so many ways I could go about this question because I
Yeah.
think the Civil War and Civil War monuments are such a part of my, entire life at this point. There's always like the angle of, I was a little kid Civil War person who saw the Ken Burns documentary when I was at a very impressionable age, and that was the soundtrack of kind of my entire childhood. And
Mm,
so, realizing that I could combine my interest in art history with studying the Civil War was something that I was thrilled about and it was really the reason I went to graduate school was to be able to
wow,
do
I
that.
didn't know that.
Um, but as I started to work on my dissertation, there was my natural interest, but there are a number of things that I think are really key to think about with Civil War monuments. And one of them is that these monument forms are not just from the 1870s or the 1880s or the early 20th century. These are ancient monument forms. Civil War Union and Confederate monuments look just like the victory monuments from ancient Rome, the obelisks from ancient Greece, the uh, funerary monuments or the obelisks of ancient Egypt, the funerary monuments of ancient Greece. So all of these different kinds of things are what is coming into these monument forms. Thinking about why that is that America is so invested in these particular ancient cultures,
Uh,
especially ancient Greece and Rome, and the history of democratic republics. Um, that's why 19th century Americans are so drawn to them. What does it mean for us? What does it feel like to stand in front of one of these monuments and having it tower over you? So there's all those kinds of ideas. There's also the fact that Civil War monuments kind of made American sculpture. If you think about sculpture entirely, it's expensive. It's made out of marble and bronze. You can't do it by yourself if no one's ever taught you. You can't pour bronze in your apartment, probably, um, or carve marble if no one's ever taught you how to do these things. And up until the Civil War, American sculptors had kind of limped along trying to figure out how to do this stuff. They didn't have the funding. They didn't have kind of the impetus that they needed. They were going to places like Italy and Paris to try to learn how to do these things. But the Civil War meant all of a sudden every American town wanted sculpture, and that meant money and that meant funding, so that people like Augustus St. Gaudens or Daniel Chester French, the great sculptors of the late 19th century, were boys during the Civil War and went into sculpture because suddenly it was something that they could do, and something that they could make money doing.
oh,
The entire foundation of an American sculptural tradition is really buoyed by the Civil War.
wow.
Um, so that's another issue. You
Wow.
also have the issue of like public space. Who gets to decide what's in public space? Who gets to decide what monuments should look like? Um, should it be the eggheads in New York City who decide on the taste for everyone, or should it be local people who have a series of bake sales and whatever to scrape together the funds to be able to buy a $200 monument? Who gets to set the taste? And that's another really interesting idea. Um, what does it mean to have the same sculptures replicated in city after city after city? Is this bad taste? Or does it mean that this really powerful idea is something that goes from place to place to place?
Wow.
Um, and, all of these things I think really drew me to the topic even before it was something that people really talked about. And I feel really passionately that paying attention to our public monuments is enriching to all of us for so many reasons.